Welcome to Channel Today in History. In today's video we will talk about the day, September 7, 1822, Independence of Brazil. The painting by painter Pedro Américo about the cry of the Ipiranga is already well known by a significant portion of the population. A common image in textbooks and other publications, the work seeks to recreate the fact, building a memory where Dom Pedro I is the center of the action. Completed in 1888, the impressive work was commissioned by Dom Pedro II to praise the memory of his father and the institution of the Empire of Brazil. Little did our second emperor know that months later the proclamation of the Republic would remove him from the throne. In the painting, Dom Pedro I appears in a privileged place, sword in hand, giving the famous scream mounted on his horse, an animal inappropriate for such a long journey. Around him, the entourage that followed him, already in Sao Paulo, followed the act. On the left, the Imperial Guard, according to the painter, as the Empire of Brazil did not yet exist, appears in a gala uniform, equally inadequate. A house that did not exist at the time appears in the painting, and the people are brought into the event through the inclusion of some popular people in the scene. The Ipiranga stream is also in the wrong position in relation to its course. In short, the work was not intended to be a photograph, but the construction of a memory, in which the formation of the Brazilian state took place thanks to the action attributed to a single individual, the one who would be the agent of the nation. For a long time, schools propagated this memory, reinforced during the period of the military dictatorship, 1964 to 1985. Several historians banked the proposal, building independence against an oppressive and powerful nation. In other words, the more Portuguese oppression was highlighted, the more significant would be the action of the future emperor, and of independence itself, given that weight was given to the act of rupture. However, historiographical reviews have relativized this almost exclusive action by Dom Pedro, which obviously does not exclude his role as a leading player in the independence process, since around him the elites were able to guarantee the maintenance of slavery and the non-revision of an equally thorny issue, which was the possession of the land. The independence of Brazil can be associated, evidently without any pretension of exhausting the theme, to at least two aspects: the diffusion of liberal ideas and the economic development provided by the Industrial Revolution, which forced the opening of markets, that is, the free market trade, as opposed to mercantilist ideas of state control of economic activity. Since at least the 18th century, Brazil had become a colony of much greater economic importance than its small overseas metropolis. Brazil had a good agricultural production for export: sugar, tobacco, brandy, gold, leather, cotton, and a domestic food market, as a producer of rice, corn, beans, jerked beef, among other items, in addition of the potential for installation of manufactures and a large population, together formed by captives, poor whites, indigenous people, freedmen and free men of a large commercial and agrarian elite. The famous dairy cow lent its teats to the survival of Portugal, which also had relations of dependence on England. Since the 1750s, the reforms of the Marquis de Pombal sought to develop the Portuguese colonial empire, somewhat in the mold of the Bourbon reforms attempted by the Spain of Carlos III. Pombal and others, after him, sought to reform Portugal, but under an iron fist, and attacking the interests of the commercial and agrarian elites, having as an example the creation of companies of commerce. The intense fiscalism would generate revolts such as the Conjura Mineira in 1789, and the Baiana in 1798. Later, attempts at regional emancipation surfaced, such as the Pernambuco insurrection of 1817 and the Confederation of Ecuador of 1824, which were harshly repressed afterward. Its weakening, precisely when these movements were dismantled at the time of the debate about slavery and the land. Freedom, yes, but equality would be another problem. These last two events took place during the administration of Dom João VI, after the arrival of the royal family in Brazil in 1808. The insurgents felt disadvantaged by Dom João's centralism in the southeast, from where political decisions emanated. However, the arrival of the royal family had transferred the political headquarters of the Portuguese Empire to Brazil, which, due to this fact, would become the United Kingdom in 1815. The economic center of the Portuguese colonial empire now became its political center, and the new kingdom would feel the benefits of free trade relations, with the debate in favor of the opening of the market, even though it was contrary to the wholesale Portuguese merchants who profited from the monopolies. Liberal conceptions would generate the 1820 Porto Revolution, which forced the return of Dom João to Portugal in order to defend his throne, which he did by submitting to a parliamentary monarchy, grudgingly swearing a constitution. The so-called Portuguese Cortes sought and succeeded in the exclusion of many Brazilian representatives, i.e. parliamentarians, in the formulation of that constitution. Fiscalism, attempted recolonization, which meant maintenance of commercial monopolies, and political submission may have been too much for the sectors of the commercial elites and holders of local power in the now former colony. The formulation of a dual monarchy was thought to be unsuccessful. Movements such as Freemasonry and liberal figures such as Goncalves Ledo and José Bonifacio would become leading figures in the political struggle. The voice of the streets was also heard, with the growing rivalries between Brazilians and Portuguese. The result, perhaps, really couldn't be different: the breakup. However, this was a careful break, since slavery would be maintained, the census vote was instituted, by income, and the monarchic regime adopted, with the son of King Dom João as the figurehead, unlike other independences in America, which would adopt the republican model. Perhaps one can speak of a political pact between Dom Pedro I and the Brazilian political elites, which would later be broken and lead to the abdication of the first emperor. But that would be another story. From September 1822, Brazil would become a state independent of Portugal, and with a clear path for its structuring, which it did without meeting the wishes of social groups that were judiciously excluded from the spheres of power. In 1888, Pedro Américo's paints sought to build the memory of a nation formed almost as if by a unified national will, without touching on the differences purposely maintained and assumed in the construction of the Brazilian state. Did you like the video? In the description you will find the blog link with the full article. Give an incentive by subscribing to the channel, liking, commenting, and sharing with your friends. Hugs. Until the next.